Sure.
So we continue on our pathway down the parables, trying to find hope. How is it that hope is challenging for you? What is it that stands in your way of hope? If you're like most of us, it's probably the situation, the moment right now that presents itself in whatever way. So what about this moment right now doesn't give you an easy, long-term, hopeful view? Some of it's what we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
What about it? Tell me a specific that for you is just a challenge about this. Bob and I were talking earlier, and he was saying this. He drives people to doctor's appointments. So now, instead of being able to sit in the lobby, he has to sit in his car. It's not fun sitting in a car during a whole doctor's appointment, is it, Bob? and so that's a moment of not quite perfect for him in the midst of all this. How about the rest of you? What's unhopeful, uneasy?
I mean, I really try to, when I catch myself going to a place of not feeling hopeful, I really try to, when I recognize it, I try to counteract it and move to a more hopeful place. But for example, I think it was, what's today, Wednesday? It was Monday. I had to go pick up a prescription at my pharmacy, and they do have drive-throughs, but mine doesn't, and I could switch, but I've decided not to. But anyway, I was in there, and then I picked up a couple other things. I had to go to the ATM, and it's just walking around a store where there's all these, different things in place, like the little lines for you to stand 6 feet apart, and there's just not many people in there, and there's some empty shelves. It just feels strange to me, and it I don't want to be in that for very long. I just want to get in and get out, so I don't have to feel it and look at it.
Yeah. And all those things that we considered normal, like, for example, you talked about an ATM. So I went to an ATM yesterday, and first of all, I find myself as I'm walking towards it having those thoughts that I never used to have, but I wonder if it's clean.
Yeah.
Well, I never used to have that. Then I got there, and this particular ATM is closed in favor of another one. Not everything's open all the time. They're not servicing. And it's just all those little reminders, often small ones, that make it not quite what I'm used to. And that gets in the way of the longer vision. How about for the rest of you? What makes today, our situation, less easy to be hopeful? What don't you like or understand about it?
One thing
I'll just say, for me, spring has finally come, I think. It's going to be 70, and the trees have leafed out, and it was a really long, protracted, rainy spring in Maryland. So as long as there's some sunshine, which I do have seasonal affect disorder, and I have one of those lights, and I'm thinking about buying an extra one to have in another room. I'm actually feeling hopeful because, I don't love shopping. I hate it.
Yeah.
I don't mind being home. And something I always wanted to do was to go on a silent retreat. And so here I am living in this rural area, no close neighbors.
So you're the one we get to blame for all of this.
I'm kind of and it's not a shock to me because of my medical training and epidemiology. I kind of knew something really bad was going to be happening, and it's going to be a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm prepared to, I'm kind of prepared. Not to say that it has been easy, but having a sunny day really makes a difference for me. A simple thing that you all take for granted out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But see, that's what you mentioned before, the rain. is an important thing for us to remember, because we forget how important rain is because we don't use it as much here as what you know, like I'm looking past your head and there's some gorgeous trees in the background.
Yeah.
You have gorgeous trees like that.
I'm getting to sit outside.
Yeah. If you don't have rain, you don't have gorgeous trees, right? And we all know that the water brings the vegetation, don't we? We all know that the rain is important that way, but when you're in the middle of the rain, it's easy to get the depression of the rain. Oh, I wish it would just stop. I'm tired of it. All of that seasonal affective disorder. But that's important stuff in the bigger picture. So here's my notes about just how to start thinking about today. Oops, where is it? There it is. We believe in the kingdom of God. When we believe in the kingdom of God, it doesn't mean everything will be perfect. It means that God will be present in the midst of the situation, whatever it happens to be. Okay? Now, this kingdom of God, remember, is that idea that there is something larger than what we're seeing right now. Something bigger, something that we need to believe in the midst of whatever we're going through right now. And part of that is saying that in this rain, trees will find more strength. Flowers will come up. And we have to remember all of that and discover that divine presence right now. Even though right now it's not seeming to be here. Okay? One of my beliefs in the divine, in God, is that God is ever present in every single situation. And we do a lot of stuff that says God is gone sometimes. God is gone because of how you acted or because of what's going on in the situation. I just don't believe that. God is present, but do I in this moment, even in spite of my actions, whatever they may be, do I believe that God is still with me? And that God is with that other person I'm fighting with. Right? So in the midst of this, that's what we want to remind each other. So let me show you a couple of the passages. Come on. The first one is, suppose one of you has a friend and you go to him at midnight and say to him, friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread, for a friend of mine has arrived and I have nothing to set before him. And he answers from within, do not bother me. The door has already been locked and my children are with me in bed. I cannot give up and give you anything. I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you anything because he is his friend, at least because of his persistence, he will get up and give him whatever he needs. So it's trying to remind us of 2 different things. First of all, that we have relationships still. And sometimes our differences, be they political or economic or religious or social, whatever they happen to be, sometimes try to steal relationship away from us. It's been very interesting for me to see how some people have tried to use this moment to be able to say, look, that's why we should hate the Chinese, or something along those lines. That's why we should not be in relationship, because they're different. They're not us. And we like drawing lines of us and them, don't we? Of a whole bunch of different ways. But at least part of the gospel is what? That God is with every one of us. Even the one that lies on the other side of whatever divide I've set up. Right? Like we can see that Bob is a cat person. And you know, some of you dog people may not like that. Maybe looking at him with a little suspicion now. Right? But the reality is cat people and dog people are all loved. They just get their love differently. Right?
Okay.
But we have to keep reminding ourselves of that because there's very real differences that make the situations that we're in, right? So think about some of the people that you have a difference with. Are they only that difference? Or is there something more there? And they're insistently calling something out to you. And you may not understand it, you may not even agree with it, but are you listening at least to the persistence that they are using? Is there something that you can do to be able to help that persistence? With Bob, my cousin, who lies on the opposite sides of political things as me, I've had to understand some of what's driving him right now. Okay? Much of it is fear, but fear that he won't even recognize. And so I can't call him out and just say, you're just afraid, because that will only make him hold on to that fear stronger and fight against me with that fear. I have to start using a different tactic if I'm going to be able to enter into that relationship. He also is dealing with skin cancer, which is born deep into his face. Do I take that into account? That's a need and a fear and an insistence in his world as I deal with him in the places that divide us. Who is it that's separating you? Who is it that's knocking at your door in some way, asking for something that you don't want to get out of bed and give? And is there some way that you can hear the voice of love from something beyond just yourself, instead of just the voice of annoyance, the voice of walls between us? Because those things are real and alive, but the voice of love can also be alive if we remember. I believe that all of what we're talking about right here is prayer. How do I pray for Bob in the midst of the differences? How do I continue to hold him in my heart even when he hurts my heart? How do I be in connection with him even though I disagree with some of what he is? Bob and his wife Kimberly don't have a lot of money, and so a friend started a Facebook GoFundMe type of page. So it comes across my feed and I go, do I give? Because and I listed all the reasons why we could be separate. I said, but he's my cousin. And I give to all these Facebook things. Why do I even hesitate? But I hesitate, of course, because of the differences, where I should step right into it because of the love, the relationship, the hope that we can continue together. How about you? Where do you struggle? How is a friend knocking at your door at an inconvenient time? How is life doing that to you?
Harry.
I'm trying to find some. I've got 2 or 3 different situations. I have to pick one. I think just for me, I've found in the last 10 or 15 years, I've gone through a lot of changes just in my belief system. And I've moved into a church, which a lot of my longtime friends are secular. And I find myself I just edit what I say sometimes because I'm afraid they won't understand it, or somehow they won't accept me in the same way. And I know that's not really true.
Right.
But and I get the same thing from them. Sometimes they will say things and I just want to counter it with a different viewpoint, but I hold myself back because I think it will somehow affect the relationship. going forward.
But we and life around us has given us more reasons to believe that we will separate because of those differences. And we may not think we do, but we've done some real typical things of how we do that. We have separated because of some of those issues these days. Very real walls of separation. We can argue about who's built those walls, but I believe it's all of us. Maybe I think maybe somebody else has put on bigger bricks than me, but it doesn't mean my bricks aren't there too.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we have to figure out in the midst of it, in order to find hope, is to remember what Jesus's conclusion was at this. And he doesn't make a complete conclusion, as he usually doesn't. He calls us towards a better conclusion. He basically says, which of you won't? Even if you don't like the guy, you still get up because you're tired of the knocking on the door.
Yeah.
Right? And we have to remember at its core that at our core, that there is something that responds even when we don't want to. There was a story out this week that made its way across Facebook about Lord of the Flies. Did you see that?
Yeah.
You know the Lord of the Flies story where the kids get stranded on an island and everything goes to hell in a handbasket, and everything, they deteriorate all the way. I think we've told that story so much that we believe that that's all that will happen. That left to our own devices, we will always deteriorate. So a story came out about a bunch of kids from Fiji, I think it was, that ended up on an island like that. And they were there for more than a year. But what they devised, there were 6 of them, was a way of working together and caring for each other. One kid broke his leg, and they cared for that kid who had the broken leg, and they helped each other. And I think that at our core, we as human beings have a sense of preserving and helping each other more than what sometimes our theology that says we're going to give into our sinful, evil side first. Is that true? Or will the best part of us, the divine side of us, always rise up? Now, obviously, we have examples of where that doesn't happen easily or well, but which is more true? Is God more present, or is Satan more present? I guess is kind of what I'm asking. And I think what Jesus is saying, that for him, the divine is always an influence. And the more we let that be there is when we get up because of the relationship, not because of the annoyance. All right, I'll get up because he makes me. But the more we choose, the better that situation becomes. Okay? So the question then goes, am I looking only at myself, or am I seeing the relationship around me? So let me show you the next parable. It says, the land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, what should I do, for I have no place to store my crops? Then he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grains and my good, and I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasure for themselves, but are not rich toward God. What's this essentially saying? What's it mean to you?
It's live in the present and see God around you every day.
Yeah. I think the difficulty is that we do a lot, Sandy, we do a lot of thinking about, we've been taught way too well to think about the future. And at least one of the important gospel disciplines is what I think of as the discipline of enough. How much is enough for each of us in each situation and with each set of things that we like to collect? I love to collect, you know how many movies I have? Bunch, and I love to show off those movies. I have a bunch of books, I have a bunch of music. I can collect easily and well. When is enough? I think it's when I start holding on to and not letting go of. If I say, I have all these movies and you can't have any. I have all these movies and you can't have the riches of what they've given to me. I have all this and it's only mine. Then I've defiled the concept of enough, because I think I have to hold on to more than, and all of those things that I have. For example, the farmer who has all these crops, he doesn't really need them. Who can he give them to? But he stores them up for himself, and he churns those internally just in case he doesn't have enough. And the fear of not having enough causes him to forget that here's somebody over here that needs a little bit of the wheat that he's just stored away. Someone else who needs the pumpkin that he's put into his barn for himself. What is it that you're keeping for you instead of letting go because you have enough? So a lot of this is dealing with the fear of what is it that I'm afraid to lose. What kind of fears have you faced that way? When you look around you, what is it that you don't want to lose?
Well, when the store shelves are devoid of the vegetables that I want.
Yeah, absolutely. How many grabbed at least something in a grocery store because there was only one of them left, and so you better get it just in case, right? And in this moment, there's a whole bunch of where it's uncertain. Will there be toilet paper when I run out of the 57 packs I have at home? And so we grab one more, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard not to do that. And some of it is reasonable, but some of it is way beyond reason too. What else?
You know, this is kind of a weird thing, but I want to give something, and I'm bombarded by all these groups that need, and I just know years ago, because of my job, I had to join the American Cancer Society. This is 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to learn that a lot of these places, and I'm not saying American Cancer Society, but a lot of these places, when you go and you look and you see how much goes to fundraising and how much ends up really going to helping people, it's a discrepancy. And I'm kind of obsessive that I want it to go where I know it will. Who in this pandemic is the most needy?
Yeah.
And so consequently, because I want to be my type A person, I'm not giving anything. Yeah. So.
And that's hard because all of us do hold on to things, right?
I mean, I don't know what's behind it. You know, so I worked hard, and in my retirement, if I'm going to give something away, I want it to really be used.
Yeah.
How can I ever be reassured of that? So I'm not. Yeah, I don't know all my what all my obstacles about that are, and of course, when I was working, and you give to one, it seemed like one Indian school of this Montana and the boys down here, you give to one and you get on a mailing list. No, I was bombarded with these things. And then finally I said, wait, just pick one. You got to pick one or two. You can't just keep giving 20.
Yeah. Well, and part of what you have to remember in the midst of all this is it's not your job to save the whole world, right? There will always be more causes than what you can give to, but you can't let the enormity of everything that needs to be helped stop you from helping the one in front of you, right? And so keep doing what you were doing. Evaluate well what it is that each charity is, and then find the ones that are most worthy of your dollars and give to those. Let somebody else give to other ones that mean something to them. So for example, one of the things I give to, since my grandmother went through the last quarter of her life with Alzheimer's, is I donate to the Alzheimer's. It's not because Alzheimer's Association is better than the Cancer Society, because I have a connection, a personal connection to that, right? And so I hope somebody's giving more than I am to the Cancer Society, because that needs to be done too. But this is one of the places I've chosen to give.
I think there's also a point where, for me, I'm bombarded by stuff too. Exactly the same thing. There are websites where you can check, what percentage of an organization's what you're giving will actually go to the people and what percent goes to advertising and administrative stuff. You just pick the ones that mean the most, and then just put it out there and trust that it's going to do some good, and let go of, whatever the other issues are.
Yeah.
At some point, you just have to.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
make a choice.
Don't either try to save the whole, or don't get overwhelmed by what you can't do. Right? Do what you can, not what you can't. It's that old saying, do what you can, not what you can't. But this parable is very clear, don't just hide the stuff away for yourself. Keep enough, but let go of the abundance. What's the overreach of whatever? And I think part of that comes down to this. I don't think we're necessarily called in every single moment to give to every single person. How many have gone down the freeway and you've stopped and there's a guy sitting out your window with the little little thing, feed me, I have no food. I don't think you have to give money to every single one, but if you feel your heart moved in this moment, reach and give. So back when I was in my late 20s, when I had not much money, I had this little teeny car, and it had a cigarette ashtray, and I began tossing my change into that ashtray. And I did it because by the end of the month, that was literally the only money I had left. And so that's how I was paying for the last couple of days of the month until the check came in. But as I moved into my 30s and got into more stable of a situation, I realized that was filling up. So I began using it very differently. I moved down to Phoenix about that time and saw more of the folks on the corner. And I realized that it was a good spiritual practice for me to, rather than question who this guy was, I would just reach and give. Before I put in all my judgments about who it is that other person is, why they didn't deserve it, or how they would use it wrongly. So what it was for me, it was just this practice of saying, here's somebody in need, I'm going to give. I'm going to let go. I'm not going to hold for myself, because I'd come to the realization that I didn't need that money in my ashtray anymore. So why not give it to this person who seems to present I do need it. I think you have to put things like that into place so that you purposely let go in some way or another. And there's not a perfect way of doing that. You don't have to do the ashtray thing like me. I think you have to figure out how it is that you purposely choose to not hold on and build your bigger barns. This parable is often called the parable of the rich fool. Why is he a fool? Because he's trying to just hold on to rich, not trying to see bigger than. So don't be a fool, I guess is what this one's about. Figure out where you can give. The challenge of all this, though, is that we don't know a lot about life. At least part of the narrative out there is hell in a handbasket, some derivation of that. What do I have to save for myself? How much of the stores that I have set aside are appropriate stores? And I think we do that partially because we don't know. And in Christianity, we have a very real narrative that says you can't know, that it's beyond you to know. And it is, to some degree, true that we can't know. But Jesus was also very clear about what we could know. Let me show you the next two parables. The next one says, it's called the parable of the weather report. When you see a cloud rising in the west, you immediately say, it is going to rain. And so it happens. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say, there will be scorching heat. And it happens. You hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time? The narrative in Christianity is often that it's all hidden from. And what Jesus is essentially saying here is, no, it's not. You can see when something's not going right. Fight against that. You can see when someone is being abused. Take care of that person. You can see what is going on. Interpret right now and act as the religious people that you think, that you say that you are. Don't become blind. At least part of the reason why the man put up bigger barns is because he was blind to his neighbors. What is it that you tend not to see? What is it that you're not allowing yourself? What is it you don't want to see today? How many have a cousin Bob in your life who you don't want to listen to? But he's a human, isn't he? Whoever that person is for you. And do you let whatever it is blind you to their humanity? And if they're hurting, are you ignoring them because of their political position? Or because of the last thing they wrote to you on Facebook? Because in this moment, are you seeing the need of that person? How do you let yourself be very open-eyed about life? Very open to God's presence in the midst of that. Because, for example, in America today, where we have so many divisions, there's got to be something where we begin to see what draws us towards each other. And if I'm so busy seeing why I should be separated from that other person, then I'm not reading the signs of the time. I'm not seeing the cloud rising and knowing that it's going to rain. Right? What is it? How is it you've taught yourself to only see things one way and you need to see things differently? It's a challenge, isn't it?
We have a relative that only watches Fox News.
Uh-huh.
And she is a very kind person. And she would just give you the shirt off her back. But all she hears is either Rush Limbaugh or Fox News. And I love her, but I can't be with her too long.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. But at least it sounds like you're still choosing to be with her a little bit of time.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what you have to do, is still keep moving towards and trying to see the goodness of her, not just the facade that she's put up because of Fox News,
Mhm.
right?
But, you know, she could be so much more.
She could be.
They, uh, have different sources. And,
Yep.
She's a fundamentalist church type person. And, you know, all her family is pretty strict.
Yep. Part of the challenge of this type of parable is it's not saying the rain is good or bad, right? It's just saying there's a cloud. It's going to happen. Something's coming up. Are you able to see that and respond appropriately to it? Because if a snowstorm's coming up and you go out in your bare feet and shorts, you're not responding appropriately. So for that person who challenges you in whatever way, how is it that you're reading the days and making a correct judgment? Because we all make judgments on a regular basis, don't we? But are we using the softest heart to make those judgments? Are we using the largest vision to make those judgments? Are we looking from a divine set of eyes, or just from my human set of eyes as I look at that situation, that person, that moment? The next parable is very similar to the other parable, and it's about the fig tree. And it says this: a man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came looking for fruit on it and found none. So he said to the gardener, "See here, for 3 years I've come looking for fruit on this fig tree, and still I find none. Cut the fig tree down. Why should it be wasting the soil?" And he replied, "Sir, let it alone for 1 more year until I dig round it and put manure on it. If it bears fruit next year, well and good, but if not, you can cut it down." I love that voice of that guy who says, you know, that thing that bugs you, let me just put some manure on it and see what happens. Because I kind of wish that on my cousin Bob and on some of those other ones, but not necessarily in the way that the parable means. But it's about, do I allow time for something to not be perfect? What is growing in that other person? We sometimes have no clue how to divine that, do we? But have you seen somebody in your life who has changed marvelously?
So one of my closest friends, it's her birthday today, so I'll be giving her a call.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said before, in the last 10 or 15 years, we've kind of gone different paths. And my assessment of it is I've moved and she's kind of stayed in the same. And it's not political. We have similar political views, but she's just still fighting those fights with all the people in her life that are different. And I've just pulled back from that because it's not worth it to me.
Mm-hmm.
But when I talk, every time we're together, she at some point gets onto this and all the frustration she has with all the people in her life that think differently and that she can't stand how they think. And it makes me crazy after a while, you know. But she is helping me with a really important project I'm working on, which is editing a collection of short stories of my late husband that he wrote that I want to publish in some kind of a book form. It's such a wonderful thing, and she refuses to take any money. And so, you know, that's the good in her, and that's what keeps me there. And, you know, so I'll give her a call later.
Yep.
And,
Wish her happy birthday.
yeah.
And step as far into the relationship as what's safe for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But that, I think, is often the difficulty, is we have reasons to not feel safe, to not want that relationship. we need to always remind ourselves that there are reasons why that relationship is still important. One of the important things that we say at St. Francis, part of our mission statements that we have, is that none are saved until all are saved. That we don't believe that I can run off and be okay just by myself, but that we are connected to each other, and it is in all of us moving towards it, whatever the it is, that the true salvation happens. And in any of those moments, that's where I have to remember that that person is important to me. I just don't know right now why or how, or if I even want what it is that they're given to me. But there's something important about the us that's there. And my judgment, my perspective, if I can say it that way, my way of limiting them to only this big of a picture makes it so that it's harder for me to be able to see the potential blessing that they are. So I love this. Again, like I said, I love that in the midst of whatever I have a problem with, I just kind of say, God, put more manure on them because they need it.
Well, I'm laughing about that. Put more manure on them is like, you.
And the other side of it is that,
The other side of manure.
you know, we can't see what, we don't know if the tree is going to bear fruit next year. It may not. It may be another 10 years. It may never be, but maybe it will.
Yeah, maybe it will. We don't know. We don't know.
So just hang in there.
But part of that is believing that there is a larger story than what I have right now, that there's something beyond my wonderful, amazing perspective, that it just doesn't fill the whole screen, right? Think about each screen that we're looking into. I'm seeing your world, Nancy. I can see part of who you are, but I can't see around the corner. There's some hallway over here to my left. I can't see down that at all, right? I don't know if it's a closet. I don't know if it goes into the kitchen. I don't know if it's a bathroom. And yet I might judge you on my limited perspective into your life. And all of us have to be careful about doing that. What we do see is important, but it doesn't tell anywhere close to the whole story, does it? So now to the last scripture, which is starting into a set of scriptures for next week. And I'll send you out the sheet of paper that I made for this. Sorry, I didn't send it out ahead of time. But next week are some of the passages, many of them coming from the latter half of Matthew 24 or Matthew 25, which are sometimes called parables of judgment, because they look and they seem to say some are chosen, some are not. Okay? Some get rewarded, some don't. And it's not really that simple, but this passage that we're going to look at, which I think is also one of judgment, is also an important one for us to remember. So it's called the Great Wedding Feast. And there's a reason why people are rejected in this story. So here's what it goes. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of stuff. Someone gave a great dinner and invited many. At the time of the dinner, he sent his slave to say to those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is ready now." But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said to him, "I have bought a piece of land and I must go out and see it. Please accept my apologies." Another said, "I have bought 5 yoke of oxen. I'm going to try them out. Please accept my apologies." Another said, "I have just been married and therefore I cannot come." So the slave returned and reported this to his master. So let's stop there for just a second. Everyone has good reasons. Please accept my apologies. But none accepted the invitation. in every single moment, what this parable is talking to us about is, what's my excuse for right now not listening? Why is it in this moment I don't hear a divine voice in this moment? Because if you just got married, that marriage is filling your head, right? Lots of things you're thinking about with that, both, that draw you towards that instead of something else. But question is, what are you missing? What might be an invitation coming to you in the midst of everything else? So right now, what's filling your head that might make it so that you don't hear something else? What is it that right now about our situation consumes you more than it should?
I think that people are rushing back to make money and to be out too soon. I don't
Yeah.
think they're considering others.
Yep, absolutely. And I understand, it would be nice. Here's the way we deal with things in our house, is that when it's my wife's turn to cook, she cooks. When it's my turn to cook, we go out somewhere. Because I'd rather buy food than cook food, right? It's probably better for both of us that I don't cook food as much. And so for the last little while, my side of the cooking hasn't happened in the same way as easily, right? And so it's not perfect. And it'd be great to be able to go to such and such a place, whatever it is. And this moment, that gives me an excuse if I'm not careful. How about the rest of you? What are some of the excuses?
Just comfortable in my routine. I've kind of adjusted to the situation. Don't push me out of it.
Yeah. And at least part of Governor Ducey's thing yesterday, here's where I struggle with Governor Ducey. Okay, so we put stay home till the 15th, but then all of a sudden he's going, oh, but on this date, so, and on this date, it's like, well, why don't we just stay till 15th and then we build it beyond that? So I'm busy struggling with that where, okay, how do we open? When do we open? What is appropriate ways of coming back into connection with each other? And I don't have all the answers to that. But sometimes my preconceptions about what should be get in the way. What about the whole quarantine blocks your vision?
Just being uncomfortable with not knowing, wanting, we don't know how long this is going to go on. And the longer it goes, the more you can see it maybe going even longer. And
yeah.
That's just hard to kind of be patient with.
Sure. Putting in the words of the parable, if you'd have given me this invitation for next Tuesday, it would have fit into my schedule much better. But you put it for Saturday, and Saturday's kind of a busy day for me. So some of this doesn't fit our schedule, the way we would have planned it, right? Someone else tells me I have to stay home instead of me just choosing to stay home. Sandy, it sounds like you were trying to say something.
Oh, well, I was thinking in the paper it said the one of 1980 lasted 2 years. And we don't know, like it said. So, it just seems like if we don't learn from the past, we could be sad.
Yeah. And the hard part is that we may be right, but what do we do when someone else has a different idea as well? Okay? And again, it goes back to the judging others. Instead of looking at ourselves and say, what are my excuses that I don't show up at the wedding feast? And how is it that I am somehow not accepting the invitation and being in that community in some way or another? When that person seems to be opening too fast, what do I do with that person? How do I, in that moment, react to them?
I think it's on us to react to our own health. And if we find out that it just isn't right for us, then just stay home, let them ask to do something else.
That's right. Because a restaurant opens doesn't mean I have to go to it. Right? Or that even if I go to it, that I have to sit and eat there. I can still do the carryout. Most restaurants have figured out that they can do carryout. Most churches have figured out that they can have distance church. Do we allow people to be able to continue to be in distant church when we come back together into a community again? Because it's helping some people, even if now most of us are all together in a celebration center. Do we allow some people to still not be there present and honor that distance church still? It's a challenge because we're always going to hear our own voice easier than what we hear the other voice. But you might have noticed that I stopped halfway through the parable. So listen what happens. When we don't listen to the invitation, the owner of the house became angry and said to the slave, go out at once into the streets and lanes of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. And the slave said, sir, what you ordered has been done and there is still room. Then the master said to the slave, go out into the roads and lanes and compel people to come in so that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those who are invited will taste my dinner. This essentially saying is that God is inviting everyone in to this space. And those that have refused, for whatever reasons, those that are missing the invitation in their life, the importance of this invitation, God makes a different space, right? How have you heard and forgot to listen to an invitation calling you towards the kingdom of God? Is a dream that Jesus had that is beyond all of our convenience, is different than any of the ways that we typically order ourselves, typically become in relationship to each other. It's different in all of than anything we dream up. And so to be called to it means that something will be uncomfortable, unusual, inconvenient for us. It might draw us into relationship with Cousin Bob. What are you going to do in that moment? So take just a second to think about what it is that could possibly be your learning edge in the midst of everything we're going through. And I don't mean just the COVID stuff, but all the political stuff that remains there, all the economic stuff that's going to be caused because of this. Where is it that you have an opportunity right now to step towards kingdom of God, towards enlarging how God's love is present and active in this world? Because this moment, like every single moment in our lives, is one that can draw us towards that love. If we let it. If we hear the invitation and not our excuse. If we look at the trees coming out on the fig tree and realize that something's going on, if we remember that the drops of rain, which right now are depressing my spirit, also give life to that fig tree. So we have one more week of this class, and we're going to look at, I'll send out the thing, but it's mostly Matthew 24 and 25 that you're going to be looking at. But I want to tell you what I want to do after this. I'm going to give you a choice which one you want to do. I'm going to tell you what I think we ought to do, but I want to do 2 classes. This is the first book that I want to study. It's called Fear. It's Thich Nhat Hanh, and he deals with how do we do that challenging thing of dealing with fear. Okay, this is the second book. It's called The Book of Joy. It's by those 2 men you see on the cover, the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. Incredible conversation that they had when they came together and talked about how do we see joy in the midst of what isn't a happy producing experience. And so those are the 2 books that we want to do. One of them will be during this time slot. The other will be on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Those of you that have been here, which of these books would you rather do? Now, let me tell you before you answer what I think I'd rather do. It feels to me that we should deal with fear first and then come back with joy, so that we kind of do them in the order that we need to do it. But so I'd rather do this one on Wednesday morning, but I will do it the other way if most of you would rather deal with joy in this hour. What's your druthers?
I like the first one. I like the fear first.
The fear one? Uh-huh.
We've read the other one and it is wonderful, but
Yeah, and they're both great books. This one doesn't just deal with fear. It also brings us towards joy. It's just dealing with the obstacles too, in ways that the conversation between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu doesn't as much.
I have a question, because I've also read the Book of Joy and I loved it. But how important is it to have read the book? Because it's hard to get a hold of books right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I ordered one for another one of your classes that just came yesterday.
Yeah.
So I ended up not doing the class because I didn't have the book. So
I'm very aware of not everyone's going to have it. So what I'm going to try to do every week is I will try to put out a sheet like this so that everyone has a summary of what I think are the salient points. And of course, I'm so wonderfully gifted that they will be exactly the only salient points that anyone could ever pull out of that book, right? So I'll try to summarize it well for you if I can.
Well, in that case, Jim, since you're going to do all the footwork up front, I would say let's do the Thich Nhat Hanh book also, just
Okay.
because I'm with you.
All right, then if that's okay with everyone, I'll put this book. So we have one more week of Dancing in the Rain, and then we'll step right into the Fear book, if that's okay.
And just so I understand, the Book of Joy is going to be the Thursday book?
It will be the Thursday class at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Oh,
The other 2 classes I'm doing still have a series of classes still to go. So these 2 classes are coming to end next week, both of these classes. All right. All right, thank you. I'll get Melissa the information about fear, and she'll send it out to everyone, so you'll have it. You'll have it all available to you. All right.
Thank
Thank
okay.
you very much.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care of you.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, you take care of you. Bye-bye.
Have a
Bye.
good week.
Thank you.
Jim, I have a question before you go.
Yes.
What Bible translation are you using for these parables?
Oh, the one that I'm showing all the time is the new Revised Standard Version, NRSV.
RSV. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
But
'Cause
you might notice that as I read, I also do a whole lot of restating it in different terms as well, because I'm not tied to holiness of a word or phrase. I'm tied to the ideas. That's where, for me, the sacred is.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.